What if I told you the very act of pleasing others is silently stealing your soul? Carl Jung's banned words reveal a spiritual debt no one dares to speak about, and once you hear it, there's no going back. For centuries, Carl Jung has been known as one of the greatest explorers of the human mind, a man who peeled back the layers of the unconscious to reveal the mysteries within. But there is a part of his wisdom that was never meant to see the light of day, a truth so unsettling it was quietly buried. The true spiritual cost of living your life to please others. Imagine waking up every morning and putting on a mask. It's a mask designed not to express who you are, but to win approval, avoid conflict, and keep everyone else happy. It might feel normal, even necessary. After all, who wants to be rejected or disliked? Yet according to Jung, this mask does far more than just hide your true self. It slowly suffocates your spirit. He once said, "When the individual sacrifices the voice of his own soul to satisfy the expectations of others, he begins a slow death of the spirit." What does that really mean? It means that every time you prioritize someone else's desires over your own inner truth, you are trading away a piece of your authenticity. This isn't a simple exchange. It's a form of spiritual bankruptcy. Your soul pays the price with fragments lost to fear, obligation, and a silent desperation that few ever admit. Why do we fall into this trap? Jung believed it starts deep, in childhood. We learn early on that love is conditional. If we behave, comply, and fit in, we are loved. If not, rejection looms. This creates a profound split inside us, between who we really are and who we must become to be accepted. To survive socially, our ego crafts a persona, a mask tailored to meet the expectations of others. But this mask is fragile. Beneath its polished surface lies a constant tension, a tug of war between the true self and the roles we play. This tension festers, and over time it surfaces as anxiety, emptiness, or even depression. Jung put it starkly, the greatest tragedy is to be invisible to oneself while desperately visible to others. Now here is where the forbidden truth comes in, the spiritual debt we incur by living to please. This debt isn't counted in dollars or hours, but in the energy drained from your inner life. Jung described it as a slow, invisible weight pressing down on the soul, an accumulation of lost authenticity and stolen vitality. He made a clear distinction between the ego, our social self, and the self, with a capital S, the deeper essence of our being, the source of our true identity and creative power. Each time we say yes when our heart says no, each time we silence our desires to keep others happy, we chip away at that sacred connection. The debt piles up, and eventually, it demands repayment, often through suffering, illness, or a haunting emptiness that no external success can fill. Look around you. How many people seem exhausted, lost, or numb? How many are locked in endless pursuit of external approval, constantly performing for a world that doesn't see their real selves? Jung's banned warning couldn't be more relevant in today's age of social media, where validation comes in likes, shares, and fleeting attention. We become addicted to pleasing, sacrificing our inner voice for the applause of strangers. This isn't just a mental health crisis, it's a spiritual emergency. But Jung didn't leave us hopeless. He insisted that the path back to wholeness requires courage. The courage to face the truth behind the mask, to say no when you must, to set boundaries where there were none before. The privilege of a lifetime, he said, is to become who you truly are. It's a journey of painful unmasking, but it's the only way to reclaim your soul and repay the spiritual debt you've been unknowingly accruing. This transformation is not easy. Society resists those who break its unspoken rules of pleasing. Yet the reward is freedom, a freedom that reconnects you with your deepest self, with the core of your being that has long been buried under obligation and fear. In the next part, we'll explore Jung's own struggles with this very issue, how he wrestled with the cost of pleasing others, and the practices he found essential to healing this invisible wound. But for now, ask yourself, what masks are you wearing? What part of your spirit are you sacrificing just to keep them on? Carl Jung himself was no stranger to this struggle. Despite being a towering figure in psychology, he battled the pressure to conform and please others throughout his life. Early in his career, he faced criticism not only from his peers but from his own inner circle, which made him question his path. The temptation to retreat into a safer, more accepted version of himself was real. Yet, he realized that doing so would cost him his very soul. He once admitted that the spiritual cost of suppressing his true self was almost unbearable. This internal conflict became a crucible for his ideas about individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of the mind. But individuation also meant breaking free from the chains of external approval. Jung found that true healing came only when he dared to honor the often uncomfortable parts of himself that society wanted him to hide. It was a painful process, but essential. He warned that those who continue to live behind masks risk falling into what he called a living death, existing without truly living. To break free from this, Jung recommended turning inward, learning to listen to the voice of your own soul rather than the chorus of outside expectations. This is where spirituality and psychology intersect in his work. The self is not a distant or abstract idea. It's a living presence within each person waiting to be acknowledged. Jung's approach wasn't about rejecting the world or others, but about reclaiming your authentic center so that your relationships become expressions of your true self rather than performances to earn approval. This shift requires radical honesty and deep self-reflection. One practice he emphasized was embracing your shadow, the parts of yourself you deny or hide because they don't fit the image others expect. When you acknowledge and accept your shadow, you stop needing to hide behind pleasing behaviors. You become more whole, more alive. Jung also warned of the dangers of people-pleasing in spiritual communities, where the pressure to conform to beliefs or behaviors can be intense. He believed that true spirituality must always honor the individual journey, no matter how uncomfortable or unpopular it may seem. He said, "The spiritual path is not a path of consensus, but a path of solitude. It is in solitude that we meet our true selves." This means sometimes standing alone, saying no when everyone else says yes, and risking rejection to remain faithful to your inner truth. Many who live their lives pleasing others lose this solitude and, with it, the chance to encounter their true essence. They become spiritual wanderers without a home, endlessly searching for approval that never satisfies. The cost of this is high. Jung spoke of it as a loss of vitality, creativity, and joy. When you don't honor your soul's call, you disconnect from the wellspring of life within. This disconnection often leads to depression, addiction, or chronic dissatisfaction, symptoms of the spiritual debt finally demanding attention. Yet the path back is available to everyone. It begins with awareness, recognizing where and when you have been pleasing at the cost of your own spirit. From there, it requires the courage to set boundaries and say no, even when it's hard. Jung believed that this is a lifelong process. The ego will always want to return to people-pleasing patterns because they feel safe, but every time you resist, you reclaim a little more of your soul. In the next part, we will explore specific steps and practices Jung recommended to heal from this spiritual debt and begin living authentically. You will learn how to recognize your masks, confront your shadow, and nurture the connection to yourself that has been quietly waiting all along. For now, reflect on this. What parts of yourself have you hidden away to please others? What would happen if you finally allowed those parts to be seen? Remember, true freedom always begins with the courage to be real, even if it means standing alone. The journey to reclaiming your soul from the chains of pleasing others begins with recognizing the masks you wear. These masks are not just simple facades. They are intricate layers built over years, sometimes decades, to protect you from rejection, criticism, or abandonment. Jung called these layers the persona, the social face you show the world. Most people believe their persona is who they truly are, but Jung revealed it as a protective illusion. The more you identify with this persona, the more you lose touch with your true self. The price? A life lived on the surface, disconnected from deeper meaning and purpose. To begin breaking down these masks, Jung urged honest self-examination. This means asking yourself difficult questions. When am I acting out of fear of rejection? When do I suppress my true feelings to avoid conflict? When do I choose pleasing over honesty? This is not a journey for the faint-hearted. Facing these truths can bring intense discomfort, guilt, or shame because it uncovers the ways you may have betrayed yourself. But it is necessary. Jung believed the first step toward healing is awareness, shining a light into the dark corners of your soul where the masks cling tight. Once you identify these masks, the next step is to confront your shadow. The shadow contains all the parts of yourself you have denied, rejected, or disowned because they were deemed unacceptable. Anger, jealousy, selfishness, vulnerability, and more. Most avoid the shadow because it feels threatening, but Jung saw embracing it as essential to spiritual growth. By acknowledging your shadow, you reclaim those lost parts and integrate them into your whole being. This integration reduces the power your persona holds over you, freeing you from the compulsive need to please others. Jung taught that ignoring your shadow leads to projection, where you see in others the traits you refuse to accept in yourself. This distorts your relationships and keeps you trapped in cycles of misunderstanding and pain. He believed that true wholeness arises from the courage to own your shadow, and through that, to become authentic. This is the foundation for setting boundaries, an act of self-respect and spiritual integrity. Learning to say no is revolutionary for someone who has lived to please. It disrupts old patterns and can trigger resistance from those accustomed to your compliance. Yet Jung emphasized that boundaries are the spiritual armor that protects your soul's sovereignty. As you practice setting boundaries, you reclaim your time, energy, and emotional resources. This reclamation fuels your connection to yourself and replenishes the vitality stolen by pleasing others. Jung also recommended practices like active imagination and dream analysis to deepen self-awareness. These tools help access unconscious material, revealing hidden fears and desires that drive people-pleasing behaviors. By bringing these unconscious forces into consciousness, you gain power over them. Meditation and solitude are vital too. In silence and stillness, you can hear your soul's voice above the noise of external demands. Jung described this inner dialogue as the dialogue with the self, the moment when your true essence speaks without disguise. This path is not a straight line. You will face setbacks, temptations to revert to old habits, and the loneliness that can come with breaking free. But Jung reassured that every step toward authenticity strengthens your spiritual core and diminishes the debt of pleasing. In today's world, where external validation is constantly thrust upon us, these teachings are more urgent than ever. Social media, workplace dynamics, family expectations, all these create powerful pressures to conform and please. Yet the cost remains the same: a loss of soul. Remember, Jung's banned interview was never about rejecting others, but about reclaiming your right to exist as your true self. This is not selfishness. It is the foundation of healthy relationships and meaningful living. In the next part, we will delve into how this spiritual debt manifests in modern life and explore real-life stories that illustrate the invisible chains of pleasing and the liberation found in breaking free. For now, start noticing your masks and your shadow. Begin small. Choose one moment to say no, one truth to speak, one boundary to hold. These small acts are the seeds of your spiritual awakening and the repayment of your soul's debt. In modern life, the spiritual cost of pleasing others often shows up as a quiet but relentless drain on your energy and joy. It doesn't always arrive as a dramatic event. Instead, it sneaks in through endless small compromises, saying yes when you want to say no, hiding your opinions, dimming your light to fit in. Over time, these tiny betrayals accumulate into a heavy burden you carry without realizing it. Jung's insight was that this burden is not just psychological, but spiritual. It disconnects you from your deeper purpose and the wellspring of life within. You might feel exhausted, unfulfilled, or empty, even when your life looks successful on the outside. This is the invisible price of a life spent living for others. Many people try to fill this emptiness with distractions: work, social, media, relationships, substances. But these are only temporary fixes. The soul's hunger cannot be satisfied by external things. Jung called this the existential vacuum, a spiritual void that can lead to despair or destructive behavior. The good news is that awareness itself begins to heal. When you recognize this emptiness as a symptom of your spiritual debt, you gain the power to change. You can begin the work of repaying what you owe your soul. Real-life stories show this clearly. Consider the woman who spent her entire life trying to please her family, sacrificing her dreams, her needs, her voice. On the surface, she was the perfect daughter, sister, mother. But inside, she was deeply unhappy, feeling invisible and trapped. It was only when she dared to say no to pursue her own path that she started to reclaim her vitality and joy. Or the man who constantly sought approval at work, staying late, avoiding conflict, always agreeing, but eventually burned out completely. His body and mind rebelled, forcing him to confront the cost of his people-pleasing. Through therapy and Jungian practices, he began to face his shadow, the fear of rejection that kept him trapped, and slowly rebuilt his life with boundaries and authenticity. These stories are not exceptions. They are the hidden reality for many, masked by smiles and social niceties. Jung's banned words expose this reality with brutal honesty. Pleasing others at the expense of your soul is a form of self-betrayal with lasting consequences. But Jung also gave us the roadmap back, through individuation, shadow work, boundary setting, and inner listening. The process is gradual, sometimes painful, but ultimately freeing. You learn to honor your inner voice above the noise of expectations. This is why Jung insisted that spiritual growth is a solitary path. It requires solitude because only in silence can you hear your soul's true call. The crowd's applause fades, but your inner truth remains. This truth, once embraced, becomes a source of strength that no external approval can match. What happens when you finally repay this spiritual debt? Jung described it as becoming whole, integrated, and free. You live with a sense of peace and authenticity that radiates outward. Your relationships change because they are no longer based on performance, but on genuine connection. You become a beacon for others trapped in the same cycle. This transformation is the hidden power behind Jung's teachings, the part the mainstream never talks about. It's the reason why his banned interview still resonates today for those willing to listen. So, if you feel drained, lost, or like you're living someone else's life, take heart. This is your soul's way of calling you home. The spiritual debt you carry is not a sentence but a wake-up call, an invitation to begin the journey back to yourself. In the next part, we will explore practical exercises and mindset shifts you can start today to break free from the bondage of pleasing and step into the freedom of authentic living. For now, reflect on your own life. Where are you overextending to keep others happy? Where is your spirit quietly asking for more? More honesty, more boundaries, more self-love? Listen carefully. The answers are within. Breaking free from the spiritual debt of pleasing others starts with small but intentional actions. Jung believed that transformation begins with awareness, but awareness alone isn't enough. You must take concrete steps to reclaim your soul. First, start by noticing when you say yes out of habit or fear rather than genuine desire. This moment of pause, even if it's just a breath or a mental check-in, is powerful. Ask yourself, am I agreeing because I want to or because I'm afraid to disappoint? This simple question creates a space for choice. a break in the automatic people-pleasing pattern. Over time, these small moments of conscious refusal build up, teaching your mind and spirit that it's safe to prioritize your needs. Next, practice saying no. It sounds basic, but for many, it's one of the hardest words to utter. Start small. Decline a social invitation, refuse a favor that drains you, or set a boundary around your time. Notice how it feels. Chances are, discomfort or guilt will arise. This is natural. Jung reminded us that the ego resists change because old patterns feel safe, even when they harm us. But every time you stand firm, you strengthen your spiritual core. Saying no isn't selfish. It's self-respect. It's telling your soul, you matter. Another powerful practice Jung recommended is journaling, especially exploring your shadow. Write honestly about your fears, your anger, your desires. Hide from others and even yourself. Don't censor, let it pour out. This process uncovers the parts of you that have been buried under the weight of pleasing and allows you to acknowledge them with compassion. When you embrace your shadow, you stop projecting your inner conflicts onto others. You become more self-aware, more authentic. Meditation and solitude are also essential. Set aside time daily, even if just 5 minutes, to sit quietly and listen to your inner voice. Don't try to fix or judge what arises. Simply observe. Over time, this practice strengthens your connection to your true self and reduces the noise of external expectations. Jung saw dreams as another gateway to the unconscious. Pay attention to your dreams and reflect on their messages. They often reveal what the conscious mind tries to suppress. Keeping a dream journal and discussing your dreams with a therapist or trusted guide can deepen your self-understanding.